If you're a long-time reader or watcher of WhatCulture, then you probably come across a few of our videos detailing the times that video games do annoying things that we wish they wouldn't. There's often at least something to gripe about even in the best of games, but often knowledge of these irritations seem to breeze right by the game creators. Not so in the following list, where developers included a nudge to players that they knew a certain aspect of the current game, its predecessor or series, was pissing fans off. This doesn't always mean they went ahead and removed the mechanic or feature causing player frustration, but at least we were all on the same page about it being a pain. And who doesn't love a bit of self-referential and self-deprecating humor? I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 times video games knew they were being annoying. Number 10. GEARBOX knows they stuffed up the first Borderlands ending. It's pretty common for developers or publishers to come out in interviews after games to admit that they messed up a certain aspect of that game, but usually they don't actually reference it within the series itself. Such was the case with Borderlands 2. Now, if you don't know, Borderlands had an absolutely notorious ending that asked players to jump through a ton of highly saturated bombastic action hoops, only to reward them with essentially nothing. No legendary cache, just a monster in the vault you've been hearing about since the start of the game, who you finish off only to realize he wasn't even guarding anything cool. Understandably, players were not stoked about the decision to have the game end this way, and in Borderlands 2, GEARBOX threw in a line in the intro of the second game that proved they knew they annoyed players. The sequel begins with an introductory narration from Marcus Kincaid, who says, "First there was the vault, an alien prison opened with a mystical key. To the warriors who opened it, the vault was just a container of tentacles and disappointment." Of course, the story does continue in a satisfying way in the sequel, but before there was a sequel, it was a bit of a downer. Firstly, I'm calling dibs on Tentacles and Disappointment as the name of my punk band, but also, it was a little reassuring to see that GEARBOX understood that they annoyed us with the ending of the first game. Number 9. SPIDEY'S irrationally far-flung childhood backpacks. Who doesn't love an open world game collectathon that encourages you to look into every nook and cranny of the game world, and if you can't manage to complete it, simply nags at you in the back of your mind until you do? Well, some players of 2018's Marvel's Spider-Man were not the biggest fans of Spidey's task to hunt the city for his 55 hidden backpacks. Why are there 55 backpacks of Peters just randomly slung about the city on random places and really difficult to reach ledges? The answers to those questions are pretty irrational, and Insomniac knew that. Spidey explains that the backpacks, which all have short-range trackers attached, came from a prize where he was awarded a lifetime supply of backpacks, which he clearly proceeded to gradually lose over the course of his teenage years. Once the police towers are back online, all 55 pepper across your map, though remember the trackers are only short distance and not city-wide, for some reason. Given Spidey frequently comments that he can't believe how many he lost, it seems like Insomniac knew they were being a little cheeky with their conceit on working the collectible system into the game. At least the rewards for picking them up are actually genuinely good. Number 8. Discworld agreeing adventure game systems are bizarre. Discworld is the brainchild of the late great Terry Pratchett, and in the 1990s, several video games were created to bring the fantasy realm to life in point-and-click adventure glory. The Discworld games, starring the wizard Rincewind, run him through the familiar gamut of adventure game silliness, ranging from wildly eccentric NPCs to bizarre puzzle solutions and piles of seemingly useless items to collect as you go. While all of this could be taken with a grain of salt, the developers decided to poke fun at what had been firmly established by this point as standard adventure game absurdity. Rincewind constantly complains about the ludicrous individuals he needs to speak to, the near constant fetch quests he's sent on, remarking that everyone seems to want something, and the inane puzzle items and solutions. Towards the end of the game, he actually runs into the man responsible for selling all those particularly inane puzzles. He shouts at him, and the man admits that the puzzles were mostly for padding. The entire game pokes fun at itself the whole way through, and given it's Eric Idle's charismatic voice work as Rincewind at the center of it all, it's admittedly a really good time. Even if the developers are constantly reminding you they know how annoying adventure game logic, needy PCs, and absurd puzzles are in adventure games, including the one they made. Number 7. Dragon Age 2 characters don't get out much. There is a reason that the Dragon Age 2 protagonist Hawke is the champion of Kirkwall and not the champion of Thedas. We can boil a lot of the game's curious shortcomings down to the fact that it's a retelling from Varric, but our central heroes do spend almost all of their time in the coastal city of Kirkwall. The game received criticism for featuring pretty repetitive environments, to which some players said Varric likely didn't bother to paint out the details for every warehouse. Maybe that's a little generous, but another criticism was the fact that you rarely get to set foot outside of Kirkwall. It's certainly where all the action is, but players were disappointed in being restricted to one city after spending the first game exploring all of Ferelden. BioWare are no strangers to making fun of themselves, however, and in this particular instance, that became extra clear in the DLC entitled Mark of the Assassin. The DLC takes players outside the city limits in an Orlesian estate, where they're tasked with helping a new friend steal a precious relic. In an entertaining aside that shows BioWare are fully aware of both irritating fan gripes, Meryl will tell Hawk, "It's so exciting to be out of Kirkwall. It seems like we haven't left there in ages." Hawk has the opportunity to reply with, "We do seem to spend a ridiculous amount of time in the city." Then Meryl adds, "I needed this break. I was starting to think every part of Kirkwall looked alike." Dragon Age 2 may have a couple of problems in it being Kirkwall-centric and having a ton of repetitive environments, but at least BioWare knows about it. Number 6. LucasArts know the secret of Monkey Island isn't very long. This one is short and sweet, just like the game it centers on. The 1990 classic point-and-click adventure game may be one of the greatest in the genre, but as long as there have been video games, there's been the insistence players get substantial bang for their buck. In the age of endless games as a service with constant content additions and sprawling RPGs that can take you hundreds of hours each, the bar is set pretty high. When it comes to a classic adventure game, however, you're often engaged in a linear quest, and the only thing that's going to drag it out is dependent on your ability to solve puzzles quickly or sit there for a while scratching your head. According to HowLongToBeat.com, the secret of Monkey Island lasts for around 6 to 7 hours if you don't get completely lost. Now that's not too bad for a perfect game, but it's still not all that long. Developer LucasArts seemed to be aware of this though, as the comically charged game includes a joke at the very end where Guybrush has a choice of 3 options to tell Elaine about what he learned from his adventure. One of these is, never pay more than $20 for a computer game. If you select it, Elaine asks what you're on about, and Guybrush says he doesn't know. We can't be 100% sure either, but it's a pretty safe bet that this is the developers having a little bit of a dig at their own game. Number 5. All we had to do was follow the damn train. Ah, the line that haunts a million gamer nightmares. For the uninitiated, "Follow the damn train, CJ," is a quote uttered by Big Smoke, the partner of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas protagonist CJ. In the mission Wrong Side of the Tracks, you're tasked with chasing down some escaping Vargos gang members, who are atop a train while Big Smoke attempts to shoot them down. This wouldn't be such a pain except that you're on a tricky motorbike trying to keep up. The problem is that the mission is hard, like unreasonably hard, and when you do inevitably fail, you're going to almost definitely hear Big Smoke yelling out, "All you had to do was follow the damn train, CJ," over and over and over again. Then you get that classic mission failed screen and gear up to do the whole thing again, 1 or 100 times. GTA developer Rockstar are no doubt aware of the incredible gamer frustration this mission caused players, and that was cemented by a bonus objective in the GTA 5 mission Derailed. Here, one of the gold medal objectives achieved by landing a jump onto the train is called Better Than CJ. I don't know if being aware of the fact that Rockstar knows they annoyed you makes you feel any better if you had to sink many tries into this particular mission, but there you have it. Number 4. BioWare is sorry about the MAKO. In this entry, BioWare yet again proves they're no stranger to pointing out their own shortcomings and admitting they knew they were annoying you. Mass Effect is riddled with these moments in the 3rd installment and its DLC offerings that often put gamer frustrations with the series right in the mouth of the central characters. Jack's weirdly intense "I will destroy you" combat shout is mocked by her students in Mass Effect 3, Tali comments it's not fair to get shot while you're on a ladder, and Shepard agrees it's weird that she's always saying, "I should go," to put an unnaturally jarring end to conversations, just to name a few. Of course, there would be no getting away from the ire that fans had for the MAKO, the vehicle in the first game that handled a lot like a tank in quicksand. The hatred fans had for the Hammerhead, the fragile vehicle introduced in Mass Effect 2, wasn't any better. Entering the shuttle bay in Mass Effect 3 will let you overhear Vega and Cortez arguing over whether the MAKO or the Hammerhead vehicle is better, and ultimately insulting both in the process. Cortez makes fun of the fact that the MAKO awkwardly climbs mountains and, quote, handles like a drunk rhino. Meanwhile, Vega says that the Hammerhead is made out of tissue paper. Honestly, they easily could have pulled both lines right from frustrated fans' Reddit posts. Number 3. Getting Over It knows it's annoying and it doesn't care. Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy is an entire game designed to get under your skin and leave you in a pile of rage and/or despair. There's a chance it's about overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles to learn about yourself and the joys of picking yourself back up again, but I'm pretty sure for most players it's just the pile of rage thing. The game involves trying to haul a man in a cauldron up a really weird pile of debris, and to call it not easy would be the understatement of the century. The game's Steam description literally says the game wants to hurt you, and though the encouraging narration might seem to be telling you it's okay to make a bunch of progress and then fall right back to the very beginning, the developing aneurysm you're experiencing may be telling you otherwise. Plenty of the games on this list realized they were being annoying and then nudged the player after the fact to tell them that they totally knew what was going on. This game just knew it was being a pain end to end, and it was totally fine with that. Number 2. Ubisoft knows it does towers too much. A few installments into Ubisoft's main franchises, players start to notice a pattern where they'd climb something tall, survey the local area, move on to the next area, and repeat. And repeat, and repeat, and repeat. While climbing in Assassin's Creed is a fun thing, the whole tower shtick began to outstay its welcome and players were very vocal about it. Back in 2019, the creator of Assassin's Creed actually came out and said he was a little bit sorry about inventing the whole tower mechanic, as it didn't just exist in Ubisoft games, it ended up pretty much everywhere. You can now see it in Dying Light and Breath of the Wild. The sentiment of gamer frustration was actually also implemented into the games themselves in a pretty entertaining way. When Far Cry 5 came along in 2018, gamers were already told there would not be any towers this time around. During the very start of the game, a character does ask you to activate an antenna on a radio tower, however. And when you do, he makes a point to say, I know what you're thinking, and no, I ain't gonna have you climbing towers all over the county for me, so don't worry. In this, Ubisoft showed they absolutely knew they were annoying you and promised not to do it anymore at the very start of the 5th installment. Number 1. The ice arrows pretty much suck, and Nintendo knew. Almost every new major item in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time has a purpose, and that purpose is generally pretty important. Sometimes it's an excellent new versatile combat tool, or a way to access previously unavailable places in the game world. A little ways into the 1998 game, you need to contend with the formidable Gerudo's training ground. It's a tricky obstacle course that is essentially a mini dungeon requiring Link to defeat enemies on a time limit, solve environmental puzzles, and avoid getting squashed by boulders or stabbed by those flying sharp things that move way too fast. All that to say, it is not a walk in the park by any means, and what do you get if you manage to pull the whole thing off? Ice arrows, which are pretty much completely useless except for one boss that you might have already done. While you might be glad if you had them for the encounter with Bongo Bongo, assuming you hadn't already killed him before you got there, otherwise you'll take one look at the ice arrows, admit they're pretty, and then they'll sit unused in your inventory until the end of time. To add insult to the injury of their pointlessness, a gossip stone even says, they say that the treasure you can earn in Gerudo's training ground is not as great as you'd expect, given its difficulty. No kidding. I guess the real prize was the friends we met along the way? Maybe? I don't know. In any case, it definitely wasn't the ice arrows, but thanks anyway, Nintendo. And that's our list. Do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other times you reckon video games knew they were being annoying. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.